Alright, now that we have looked at a histogram, let's turn next to the creation of a stem and leaf plot. And a stem and leaf plot is very similar to a histogram in the sense that it conveys an idea about the distribution of data. But for you to be able to create a stem and leaf plot, the underlying data needs to be less granular than data that you can use for a histogram. So for example, we downloaded data on fertility and GDP per capita Y. And if you just take a look at the fertility rate, you can see this is less granular, less complex than the GDP per capita data. Well, it is less complex because we have only always one digit in front of the decimal point and one after. But GDP per capita data is much more complex. So whenever you have a high complexity in the data, lots of different numbers, a stem and leaf plot is not really great, but it works pretty well for less granular data like the fertility rate. So I want to show you how to do a stem and leaf plot for the fertility data, but specifically a back-to-back stem and leaf plot, and I want to compare sub-Saharan Africa countries and the distribution of their data, and I want to compare that to the Latin American countries. So you can see I have sorted the data. How did I do that? I highlighted everything, and then I went to data, sorted by region, and then I sorted it in descending order. So S is above L in the alphabet, so I clicked on OK, and now the data is sorted. Okay, so now I want to create a back-to-back stem and leaf plot for fertility. So let me first open a new sheet, and I called it stem and leaf. So now I extract only the data for sub-Saharan Africa. So that goes all the way to row 47. Copy. And now I paste it maybe here. Okay, so in a stem and leaf plot, the idea is that the first digit is the stem, and the second, that's the digits after the decimal point, those are the leaves. So let's first separate that by using the text to column option. So now there's a 5.0, 6.0, 6.3. So I just want to have in column A the 5, the 6, and another 6, and in column B 0, 0, 3. Okay, so it's delimited with a period. Next. Okay, here you can see, so we have all the decimal points are 0, but whenever this is 0, Excel obviously punches in a blank. So let's replace the blanks by 0. So I highlight that column. Control F, find, replace nothing by a 0. Okay, close. So now the first column is essentially the stem, and here we have the leaves. Okay, so now those are the numbers 5.0, 6.0, 6.3. So that corresponds to those first three, 5.0, 6.0, 6.3. Okay, so now how many stems do I have? What is the lowest? So there's, for example, 0.9, and what is the highest value? Looks like it is a 6, but let's just double check using the command equals min. Then we get the minimum value. Okay, so the minimum value is 0.9. That means we need a stem of 0, what is the maximum? Okay, 6.3. So that means we have to have stems from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Here, let's just make it look a little bit nicer. Okay, so now what I want to do is, and again, unfortunately, Excel cannot just generate stem and leaf plots easily. So we have to tinker around with some formulas. So what I want to do is, I want to make sure that here underneath the 5 I pick up the leaf of 0, and in the next column underneath the 6 there should be a 0, and then under the 6 again a 3, and then under the 4 a 9. So how do I do that? I'll just say I use a formula equals if, and if that stem is equal to that 0, well then pick up the leaf which is in column B2, but if the two are not the same, just enter 2 dots. So now we should see 2 dots. So I want to ideally copy this formula to the right, and then under the 5 I should see a 0. But if I press Ctrl R, which copies to the right, I will not see a 0 underneath it. So why? What happens? Why don't I see here a 0? Well, what happened is that the formula and the cells, they shifted as I copied it to the right. So this 5 should be matched not with this cell, F2, but with this one. And then it should pick up not cell G2, but this one. So in order to prevent that the formula moves cells, we can use little dollar signs in Excel. So what I should have done is, before I copied it to the right, I should have prevented that the column A shifts to the right, so I put a little dollar sign in front. And because I also want to copy down the formula, I want to avoid that the first row moves down. So I put the dollar sign in front of the 1. And because I always want to make sure that the column B, where I pick up the leaf, does not move to the right, I put a dollar sign in front of the B. So now if I copy this formula to the right, it should work. And it does work. And now if you check the formula here in cell H2, you can see, okay, the formula compares this 5 to that 5 and then picks up the 0. And here, this 6 is compared to that 5, that's not a match, so therefore 2 dots. Okay, so now we can copy down that formula. And now I have here on top all the stems and here the leaves, but of course I still need to sort them. In order to sort them, the first thing you want to do is remove all the formulas, because in each cell we have a formula. So if I sort the data, the formula will still stay there and mess up everything. So I'll just highlight all my data with Ctrl A, then copy, and then I right-click the mouse and I say paste options values. So now you see there's no more formula. Okay, so now I'm going to push down all the 2 dots to the bottom, and I'll just use Excel's sort function. So we go to data, sort in ascending order, continue with the current selection, and there was nothing there in the column 0. There wasn't a value to sort, there are only 2 dots. But here in column 1, I want to have the 4 and the 6 on top. So we sort, continue with the current selection. Now we have here the 4 and the 6. Now we do that for the next ones. It's a little bit tedious. And of course, when you sort, you need to make sure that your data has headers. Okay, so now it looks like that we sorted the data, and so there's no more data underneath here, so I can delete this. And now what I do is, because the idea of a stem and leaf plot is that the stem is vertical and not horizontal, so what I can do is I just copy this, and now I paste it, special transpose. So maybe here or here I say there's this transpose, okay, so you see this was sorted. We basically take it and sort it. Okay, so now maybe I want to remove a little bit the space and fit to content, and now I can see, okay, there's one observation with a 1.4 fertility rate, 1.6, the highest is 6.3. We can make it a little bit nicer because it's a stem and leaf plot. Maybe make the stem a little bit brownish. Maybe more colors. What looks brown? Maybe this one here, or that. Maybe more this or that. Okay, this. And let's make the leaves green. And now we can remove all those 2 dots. Okay, Control F, 2 dots, replace by nothing. Okay, so now we have here to the right, we can see a little bit the distribution for the sub-Saharan African country. So what I want to do next is I want to put the Latin American countries to the left of it. So for this purpose I can delete everything here to the right, to the left, and now I pull up the data for Latin America. I go back to the data set. So all the data for Latin America starts here with Haiti. Copy. And now I insert that here. And now I do again text to columns. Now we have to remove again the blanks, which are actually zeros. Control F. Replace blanks by 0. Replace all. Okay. And so now we got to be careful because we want to, well, we can first use the formula just like before. And then, but when it comes to the transposing, it becomes a little bit trickier. So, but let's first fill in the formula. Okay, so it's the same formula as before, equals if this cell is equal to that cell, but don't forget to fix the cells with the dollar signs. Then, if that's the case, return cell B2, otherwise 2 dots. Okay. And I need to put a dollar sign in front of the B. So now we should see underneath the 2 a 7, which we see, and now we can copy down that formula. Okay. Next step, remove the formula here. So Control A, highlight everything, Control copy, right click mouse, paste options, paste special values. Okay. So now, earlier we sorted everything. So let's do that again. Let's sort and make sure again, continue with current, sort has values, okay. And then A to Z, okay. Okay, there's not a single one with a 3. There's not a single one with a 4, 5, or 6, so we don't have to move any further. Okay, so now it becomes a little bit tricky because we need to transpose the data. So those are our leaves here. And so you see, if I copy that one and paste the transpose, well, I need the numbers to the left, right? So what I should have done is, maybe I should not have sorted ascending, but I put the stems now at the bottom here, and I delete it there, and now I sort again 1, but in descending order. So now what happens is, continue with current selections. Actually, let's do this one. So now my data has no headers, and I sort this way. Okay. Now we do it here. We sort in descending order. And here we don't, that will be the last one because there's no other data in the other column. So descending order. Okay. So now let's delete this one here. And now let's see what it looks like if we copy this one, transpose. Okay, so now we can put that nicely next to here to the left, or because I have more space, I can delete everything from here, delete, and I'll just take this one, cut it, and I put it here. So again, this one was Sub-Saharan Africa. Now let's fit everything to content. And maybe the last thing I want to do is remove all those dots. Control F, replace 2 dots by nothing. Okay, so now we have a nice stem and leaf plot. We could make it even nicer. We can say here this is the stem, and then here we merge those cells, and then we set to the right. So we go format cells, merge, and then we can say this is Sub-Saharan Africa, and here to the left also merge cells, and here we have Latin America and the Caribbean. Okay. Okay, so now it looks a little bit nicer, and we can see that on average, if you imagine a distribution around here, so you can see that the mean is much higher in Sub-Saharan Africa than, for example, in Latin America. So on average, we can see from this back-to-back stem and leaf plot that the average fertility rate is much higher in Sub-Saharan Africa than in Latin America and the Caribbean. So a stem and leaf plot can be very useful, but to summarize again, creating a stem and leaf plot in Excel, it's a little bit tedious. There's no readily available option to just generate it with a click, but it can be done, and it's actually a good exercise to develop your Excel skills. And once you have a stem and leaf plot, it can be pretty useful in order to compare quantitative data for 2 categories like Sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean. Okay, so let's just stop here, and yeah, let's continue with some more on quantitative visualizations, and also review a little bit in the next video.